Okay, so I'm David Hoyle. Today I'm going to talk to you about a project that Tidal Institute initiated to evaluate community-scale tidal energy resources on the coast of Maine. I'll be talking about what's called tidal stream energy today, where turbines extract energy from tidal currents, much as wind turbines extract energy from moving air. Right? So unlike the tide mills that we've been talking about so far, there's no dam involved here. So this work was conducted primarily by Preston Spicer. He's a young PhD scientist. He's based in Maine. He works for Pacific Northwest National Labs, right? So it's very normal that to do a Maine study, we have people who are largely based in Sequim, Washington. And he worked with his colleagues, Chaoqing Yang and Taiping Wang. This is a somewhat technical presentation. I will try to make it user-friendly. I don't want anyone to be disappointed that I won't mention any names and any dates from this point forward in the presentation. So I think this is really a great opportunity to see, these are world-class scientists. Chaoqing, he's the chief ocean scientist at a national laboratory. Okay, so this is how these guys do this kind of work, and they've done this all around the country. This project was funded by the U.S. Department of Energy under what's known as the TEAMR program. TEAMR stands for Testing, Expertise, and Access for Marine Energy Research. It is largely composed of a federation of labs, universities, and test facilities that support people developing marine energy technology, wave, tidal, and so on, for testing of devices and components, and for doing resource assessments like the one that we're going to see here. And again, the rules for this TEAMR program more or less say, thou shalt not have a dam. So I kind of started wanting to look at old tide mill sites and thought, if I'm going to get funding, let's not try to do that. What was the motivation for the project? So many communities on the coast of Maine, including my small town of Phippsburg, are interested in making their energy supply more green and more resilient. They want to know if tidal energy can be part of their renewable energy mix. Some older tidal energy studies have identified potential resources along the Maine coast, but didn't use tools that were capable of resolving smaller scale resources. Recent studies have evaluated the large tidal stream energy resources in the Western Passage, which is in eastern Maine, near where Mark was talking about. They've also looked at the Piscataqua River down on to the south. So the intent of this study is to use modern methods to explore smaller community-scale tidal stream resources on the coast of Maine. Okay, so that's the goal of the project. Evaluate essentially evaluated regions on the Maine coast. And the Pacific Northwest Lab does this using a three-step workflow, and we're gonna walk through that workflow. So the first step is to build and then validate a numerical model of the tides extending along the entire Maine coast. Now we're going to have the ability to zoom in on particular areas of interest. We'll then identify and characterize areas that have high tidal energy density. These are known as hotspots. And then we'll simulate a few types of available tidal turbines to see how much energy can be extracted from each hotspot, and then also to see how extracting energy might perturb the local flow and whether that would have any environmental impacts. So this presentation demonstrates the workflow and the results for the Mid-Coast region of Maine. Okay, so PNNL, again, that's the Pacific Northwest Lab, used a program called the Finite Volume Community Ocean Model, FVCOM for short, to simulate the tides. So here you're looking at the model grid. This is the coast from Kittery to Cutler. This model contains nearly 1 million grid cells. Each of these cells in the model follows the same physics that governs the movement of real water. So forces like gravity, pressure, and friction, and taken together, these cells can simulate the movement of the tides. You can see that the mesh is very coarse on the offshore boundary and gets so fine we can't even see the details in the very detailed coastline. The mesh is regionally refined, sometimes manually, inside this red box, which is the Mid-Coast Maine focus region. Is there any coincidence that my house is located right there? I don't think there is. Just to say that we need sort of map data, and then we also need bathymetry or depth data, and that was taken from various NOAA sources, and you probably know that NOAA stands for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and we'll talk more about NOAA as we go along. Okay, so at this stage, here's the numerical model again. This is just a body of calm water. So the next step is to force or excite the water. We're going to do that with river flow coming from the Kennebec and Androscoggin rivers on the land side. And then with simulated tides, again, we can predict the tides with models as far into the future as we want. So with tides from the offshore side. And we're going to get some results, and we need to validate those results against measured data. So water levels we'll validate against NOAA's tide gauges, and current speeds. We need both levels and speeds. We're going to evaluate against NOAA's current speed measurements, and those sensors will be located. So the levels are at the 5 cities along the coast, and the speed sensors are again inside the red box. So on this slide, we're looking at the ebb and flood of the tides at the 5 locations along the coast over a 1-month period. I'm not going to mention a year. We're comparing water levels predicted by the model, which are shown in red. Those are overlaid over observations from NOAA's tide sensors, shown in blue. You can hardly see the difference between, or you can see only red and you can hardly see blue. So that says we've got excellent agreement, and that even extends to Gardner. So Gardner is on the Kennebec River, 40 miles from the coast, which I think is pretty crazy, and you can see it looks different from the others because we have a spring event there with some very high river flow on top of the tidal flow. Next, we have to validate the current speeds. We are, after all, going to be extracting energy from the flow of tidal currents. So those NOAA's current sensors are called acoustic Doppler current profilers. And the red dots on the map at the right show the location of those profilers. So here we're in Casco Bay near Portland on the bottom, and then in the Kennebec River or Kennebec River estuary, KRE at the top. Here, if we just, this is some of the data, and if we just look at CAB 1418, which is located in the Kennebec River. Again, we're comparing the model results in red with observations in blue. So here the graph is showing current speed going to say 1 meter per second, about 2 knots of speed. you can see the flood tide trending northeast, and the ebb tide reversing, trending southwest. So again, we've shown that we have good results with both modeling the level and modeling the currents. So now that we've verified that the model is giving accurate results, we can use it to identify and characterize what we're going to call tidal energy hotspots. So hotspots appear on maps as areas of high kinetic power density. This is expressed in watts per square meter of channel cross section. So Mark's done a nice job of reminding us that we're going to take a slice through a channel or a river, and when we talk about cross section, we're looking at the water flowing at us. How much energy do we have per square meter, or let's say square yard of flow as we look into that cross section? So this is per square meter, and so you can see here we have a fairly small hotspot where the yellow color represents something like 800 watts per square meter. So you have almost a kilowatt per square meter of theoretical energy available there. And then we can also look at the full cross section, how much energy is coming over that whole thing if we sum up all of the square meters. And that's called the kinetic energy flux, and that's expressed in kilowatts. Okay, so now we have a map. We're looking down on our region of interest in Mid-Coast Maine. KRE is the Kennebec River estuary again. And you can see that there's a lot of red color there, meaning that you can see dark red is something like 500 watts per meter squared. So again, here's the Kennebec, and now and you can see there are other red spots, and we're going to zoom in on those and identify 5 hotspots of interest. And these are where we have more than 300 watts per meter squared of energy density, and depth is 5 meters, 17 feet or greater. So what we're looking for is places where we could actually place a real turbine. So here's Harpswell. So you can see the location in the blue box. Here's the map. 300 watts per meter squared, a fairly small, I think this is the smallest of the hotspots. This is north of Bath, a very large high energy hotspot. You can see again 800 watts per meter squared. Phippsburg, a very large, very high density hotspot. We're going to be doing a lot in Bath and Phippsburg. Here's one near Westport Island. High energy, but very small. And another one near South Bristol, high energy, and again, fairly small. So those are the 5 hotspots. You can see, so the most energy, again, passing now through the entire cross-section of the river. We can see Phippsburg is the highest. So that's 4,700 kilowatts. That's almost 5 megawatts of power are coming through every second. And South Bristol, 3,600. We have and just to say, South Bristol may be high energy, but again, it's small, and it's really Bath and Phippsburg that we're going to be able to simulate some larger turbine arrays in. Okay, so we've identified some hotspots. Now we want to start to simulate turbines in those hotspots and see how much energy we can extract, right? So we're going to simulate 3 different types of turbines, and we worked with turbine manufacturers, ORPC, that's Ocean Renewable Power. They were our local guys based in Portland, Maine. They were very helpful with this study, and also a company called Quantis. So they provided turbine dimensions and specifications such that the scientists can determine how much energy the turbine can extract from the water in these simulations. So let's walk through the turbines. So this is Ocean Renewable Power's small bottom-mounted turbine. This is called RivGen. You can see this in a river in Alaska. If you go on their website, critical parameters here are the area of the turbine. That's the frontal area facing the flow, and also the hub height. How high is that above the bottom of the channel? So you can see there you've got about 18 square meters. You know, let's think 20 square yards, and it's about 8 feet above the bottom of the channel. They have a similar turbine. This is actually still in development. This is floating. It's anchored to the bottom and is floating somewhere a certain depth below the surface of the water. So we're going to call the top one a bottom turbine. We're going to call this a surface or near surface turbine. So it's about 8 feet down from the surface, similar area, right? So just think 20 square meters, 20 square yards here. And then finally, this is Aquantis's large turbine. You can see it looks very much like a wind turbine, whereas the others are this horizontal egg beater style rotor, right? And here, the area, just think 4 times as big, and we'll see that's going to give us 4 times as much area as the small ones when we put it in the same location in the water. And its hub height, so it's bottom mounted, 7 meters is something like 25 feet up from the bottom. That's going to put this kind of in the middle of the depth of the river. So we're going to call it a mid-water turbine. Okay, and I don't mean to be confusing here. So we have 3 turbines, and we're going to simulate 4 scenarios to see how much power we can generate with various configurations of turbine arrays. We're not just going to look at single turbines typically. So we did three scenarios with small arrays and 1 scenario with large arrays. And in addition, we did a base case with no turbines so that we could again see what does the flow look like undisturbed, and then we're going to put the turbines in and see how much we're disturbing the flow. You know, Mark mentioned scouring on the outside of a bend and things like that, so we don't want the turbines to cause any disturbances that would cause long-term environmental effects. Okay, so in the following slides, we're going to look at those cases. So here's the base case. We're going across the 5 hotspots. Base case, no turbines. Here we have bottom turbines only. These are the small bottom turbines. And you can see we have 1 in Harpswell, 4 in Bath, 4 in Phippsburg, 2 in Westport, 2 in South Bristol. We're going to do the same thing with the surface turbines. Mid-water, we're going to put 4 of those big turbines only in Phippsburg. That's the only place where they'll fit. And then we're going to look at, so those are all placed in the same cross sections of the river. And then we're going to do simulations where we'll put 25 of the bottom mounted turbines in Bath and Phippsburg. So those are very big arrays. Okay, so the turbine simulations enabled the Pacific Northwest Lab to compute extracted power and annual energy production for each turbine. So instantaneous power allows us to determine a certain number of watts coming from the turbine, and more importantly, annual energy production. So if we look at how much energy is that turbine going to produce over the course of a year. Right? And that's expressed in megawatt hours per year. A megawatt hour is 1,000 kilowatt hours, right? So we all know kilowatt hours from our electric bills. We're now looking at 1,000 kilowatt hours per year of energy. Okay, so here we have a graph which is showing annual energy production from each individual turbine in all of the small arrays, where we have from 1 to 4 turbines, across the 5 hotspots. So if you notice, we alternate white and gray going across. So we have 1 turbine in Harpswell, 4 in Bath, 4 in Phippsburg, etc. And to the left, I've indicated that the level of 100 megawatt hours per year corresponds to the energy needs of about 15 typical households, and would be worth, in Maine, where we pay 25 cents a kilowatt hour, about $25,000 a year. Okay, so let's explore now some of the trends. Note that the left-hand axis applies to the gray and black dots, and the right-hand axis, which is the scale's 4 times bigger, it's our 4 times area, applies to the red dots. So the black dots represent the annual energy coming from the bottom turbines. They're located, Dean, this is kind of your point, they're located in slower moving waters near the bottom. We can see that black dots are always lower than gray or red dots. The surface turbines, they're in or near the fastest currents, so gray is always significantly higher than black. And then finally, the midwater turbines, where you can see the red is almost sitting on top of the gray, and given the factor of 4 between the 2 scales, we can see that we're getting 4 times as much power out. And again, that's because they're in a fast area of fast current, and they have a much 4 times bigger area facing the current. So in the previous slide, we were looking at annual energy produced by individual turbines in the hotspots, and that was for the small arrays. Now we've summed all of the arrays to get a total per hotspot. A few key trends that we can see here. So first, the 4 large midwater turbines produce the most energy, 1,800 megawatt hours a year. We can see that those 4 turbines in fast currents produced more energy than 25 smaller turbines in slower currents near the bottom. And finally, we can see that the small arrays of small turbines only produce less than, say, 200 megawatt hours a year. So what does this mean to the local communities? Again, I'm in Phippsburg there, 859 people, 5,700 megawatt hours. So, you know, unfortunately, it's not quite going to work for my community, but the array of the 4 large turbines could theoretically power the town of Arousek. So that's which is located on nearby on the Kennebec River. Still, the amount of energy we're generating here isn't negligible by any means. So I'd mentioned that we had done a scenario, a baseline, so that we could see what the flow patterns looked like without turbines. Then we're going to put the turbines in and see how we're disturbing that flow. So here we're looking down on the Phippsburg hotspot. And okay, we'll back up. The 4 circles that we can see here. Do I have yeah, 4 circles here are where all of the small arrays were placed. The pink dots are where groups of turbines were placed to make up the array of 25. bottom turbines. And then the yellow line is where we're going to take a cross section, just as Mark did through his map. Okay, so now we're looking through that cross section. So Dean, here's your, I would say here's your answer. Sorry, I need to click again. No, I think we're okay. So the color represents speed. Let's say the dark green is about 1.3 meters per second. That's about two and a half knots. That's a pretty fast current. And we can see that it's faster, toward the surface and towards the middle. Here maybe we're in sort of a bend here, and then slower toward the bottom. This is our base case. How much are we perturbing that by putting in turbines? So now we're looking at the same section, and the colors are the difference in speed relative to the base case. So red means a little bit faster, blue means a little bit slower, and you can see the maximum here would be about 4 or 5% of the base, right? So this is the case where we have a bottom, small array of bottom turbines. So the current is slowing down where the turbines are drawing energy, extracting energy from the flow, and the current speeds up a little bit as it speeds up to bypass the turbines. And then here are the other cases. So now we have a small array of surface turbines. Here we have those 4 large mid-water turbines taking the most energy out. And then here we have the large array, 25 bottom turbines. And I think it's fair to say that in no case are we taking out more than a few percent of the velocity. I think it makes sense too, right? We had megawatts of power over the whole cross section. We're only taking out kilowatts, or 10.
Percentage-wise, the cross-section area of the turbines.
Exactly. It's very, very small, right, compared to the full cross section and the full megawatts that are flowing through. So, all right.
Why is it important to know slowing down the flow? What is the negative impact?
You might get silting, for example, or who knows what. So this is if you go to other papers by these scientists, this is a very standard way of kind of a first blush look at am I likely to be doing harm.
Conversely, if you've done power, you get
Yeah. Suddenly we have river banks tumbling in, and we wouldn't want that. So I think here the conclusion is the effect is fairly negligible. There are other things we might consider though before putting turbines in. So if we just focus on the Kennebec, the first that Bath Iron Works is located upstream from where we were thinking of putting those turbines. So I think we would have a Navy problem here. I mean, maybe we could get away with the bottom turbines, but it's not really a very good place to have them, right? We'd be better off with those nice big mid-water ones. So I think maybe this is which one is this? Is a Zumwalt destroyer, I think. So anyway, not going to be happy about that. The Kennebec River, so it's an estuary. It's a very, very unique brackish water environment. It's home to endangered species of sturgeon. Even the Ocean Renewable Power guys said to us, Kennebec River, they've obviously looked at this, you're going to have a sturgeon problem. Okay, so that's maybe another barrier. And then the other day, I walked into my town hall, and this was pinned up on the bulletin board. So this is the Navy announcing a plan to dredge the river. And if you remember, the turbines were kind of right here. I think this is where they were going to dump the dredged material. So another consideration other than wildlife and navigation. So this is Preston's joke, right? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the electricity worth the cost or the pain, right? So the turbine manufacturers were a bit reluctant to share the cost of the turbines, the cost of the installation, and all of that with us. So typically when you do this sort of renewable energy study, you calculate what's called the levelized cost of the electricity. You know, and you'd say, okay, well that has to be less than 25 cents a kilowatt hour. So we really weren't able to do that. So you know, maybe that would be for putting the electricity on the grid, right? So when Ocean Renewable Power has their RivGen turbine on a river in Alaska, they're working with a Native American community, a salmon fishing community, who pay about $1 a kilowatt hour for their electricity because they're generating it from diesel that they have to fly in to this remote location. So, you know, there are specific applications where this can make sense. And here we're thinking, sure, if we could power an aquaculture farm, maybe Bath Iron Works has some sensors that they'd like to have powered out in the river that they don't want anybody to know about. And could these local communities, could we power a warming center, a medical facility or something, or have backup power generated from the tides? So these are all things to consider. Yes, can we have an electric ferry charging station powered by the tides, right? So, you know, excellent point. So, kind of the main messages, we've identified and characterized five hotspots. We've looked at how much power could be extracted. And I asked PNNL, so can you make this code available for anybody to use? And it's basically no, but they'd be happy to do this work for anybody else who's interested in it. I mentioned to Robert, who's now Robert, that Teamer also funded a project with people looking at sort of mapping Long Island Sound. They didn't do this kind of analysis. They used previous studies, put them on their map, and then also brought in other mapping tools so that you could sort of look where might we want to site tidal energy. Okay, here's a hotspot. Here's a electrical substation. Here's the nearest substation on land. Here's the depth. Here are environmental exclusion zones. So you would have a tool that would allow people living in this region of Connecticut to try to site a tidal stream power plant, essentially. It's kind of interesting. Unlike Tide Mill Institute, they're keeping that close to their chest, so I'm not able to share it. Anyway, that's it. Happy to take any questions.
David, on micro hydro, tidal hydro, you use the same kind of analysis as on scale?
Yes. I mean, again, here you're taking energy from the flow. So yeah, there are people that have little small devices, but yeah, it all scales. I think. I don't think there's any. You're
Thank you, David.